so much that goes into nonprofit fundraising that sometimes it can feel like no matter how much you learn, there's still so many nuances and so many questions left to answer. So in this video, I'm going to talk through 6 answers to questions that you all, viewers, asked about nonprofit fundraising. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Amber Melanie Smith, and I am a nonprofit founder and executive director. I make these videos here on YouTube to help people like you who want to make an impact, whether that's through starting a nonprofit or helping out causes that you care about, social enterprise, and more. I hope, as always, that you find this video helpful. Don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. I also have a website, foundertofulltime.com, where I offer some trainings and resources for people starting a nonprofit or developing their fundraising plan. So my hope with this video specifically is that it will shed a light on some of those nuances that I referenced earlier to nonprofit fundraising. And that even though a handful of you asked these questions, I picked these questions in particular because I bet many more people have the same question, and you're asking it, and the answers that we're going to talk through today will hopefully help all of those people too. And some of these questions are really great and kind of specific and not things that people might think to ask. So I'm really excited, and let's get in here. Let's dig into these questions here. All right, so this first question is from username, and hopefully I'm pronouncing this right, Ayaoba. They said, "Hi Amber, can I start a crowd fundraising campaign before getting tax exempt status?" So this is a really great question, and something that I hear a lot from people who are in that startup phase. Maybe it's before they filed their official paperwork to get that 501c3 or tax exempt status in the United States in particular. And when you are going about starting a nonprofit, you quickly realize that there are some things that are going to cost money that you just can't get around. For example, there's a filing fee for the federal government, usually for your state as well, in order to get those articles of incorporation in, if that's the route you're going. So even if you do all of it yourself, there are inevitably going to be some things that cost money. So if you don't already have that money, you have to go get that money somehow, right? And you have a lot of different options. And in this particular case, they're asking, can you do crowdfunding? Which means, can you ask for little bits of money from the public to contribute to the grand total of what you need in order to get started? And the answer is yes. But there's a little bit of nuance to it again that you really need to be aware of. And that is that money that you raise before you get, at the very least, before you get your articles of incorporation, before you get your incorporated status in your state as a nonprofit, assuming you're in the United States, money that you raise could possibly be interpreted by the IRS as personal income for which you might need to pay taxes. So what I recommend is, me not being an accountant or a lawyer, I recommend that you talk to one and just get their take on it and share your plans before you undertake any significant fundraising for a startup nonprofit before you get that tax exempt status. Now, if you get incorporated in your state, assuming again we're talking about the United States, if you go ahead and do that first level of incorporation as a nonprofit in your state, and then you go on to raise money for the next phase of starting a nonprofit, which is filing the federal paperwork to get that official tax exempt status, then the money you raise between being incorporated and getting that official tax exempt status could possibly be retroactively considered tax exempt. So more nuance there. Talk to your lawyer/accountant. Question number 2 is from a user, Susie G, and it's kind of related to that first question, but it's a little bit more specific. So Susie's question is, "Hi, starting a nonprofit with some crowdfunding," so similar situation. "Love your content, thank you." Thank you, Susie. Can I put on my website that I am applying for 501c3 status, and what would the wording be? This is a really good question, and it's all about transparency. So yes, you could put on your website that you are in the process of applying for your 501c3 tax exempt status as a nonprofit, if that is in fact true and you're making that statement in good faith. But I want to be clear that just because you say that on your website does not mean that donations made before you get your 501c3 status are tax exempt. So you do need to have on your website, if you're going to be putting that you're in the process of applying for that status at all, you also need to add that donations are not tax exempt until you get that status. So I know that sounds a little scary and like you're concerned that maybe people won't donate if you remind them that their donations are not going to be tax exempt. But I have some good news for you. And that is that in my experience, people rarely make a donation because of a tax exempt status. When people donate, it's because they either have a personal connection to you or a personal connection to your cause. They're not going to be like, oh, well, it's not tax exempt, well, I no longer care. That is highly unlikely. So I say, go ahead, be transparent, put that information up there if you'd like to, but make sure that, donors and potential donors have that information up front so that you can follow the law and be creating an authentic, honest experience with those first donors. Question number 3 is from Cindy T, and they ask, how can you do fundraising in places or to people you don't know? Cindy and anyone else who might be thinking about this question, that is a really good question. And I have done some other videos about the process of starting to get donors, starting to build up a donor base. So I definitely recommend that you check those out in my fundraising playlist or across my channel if you haven't already. But the summary of the answer that you're looking for is that it is hard to raise money from complete strangers. So there is going to be a period of time before you can probably actually receive money from donors, where you're going to need to take some time to build relationships and raise awareness about your organization. There's a couple of different aspects to this. The first is you've got to have that awareness piece first. People can't donate to your cause if they don't know it exists. So you have to spend some time getting outreach out on social media, going to events, talking to people, seeing if you can get some speaking engagements with groups, just getting your name out there as an organization and making sure that you're giving people an opportunity to opt in by giving you their email address or other contact information to keep getting more communication from you about the cause. This is called donor cultivation, and you have to do this step before you can expect to get donations. Are there some situations where you might have your organization in a big news story and then have some donations come in that way? Yes, it is possible. But these situations, in my experience, are pretty rare and depend on some pretty big things happening out there in the world that would be drawing a lot of public attention to your specific issue area at the moment your media story hits. A classic example of this is natural disasters. People are watching the horrible footage on the news of all the suffering and everything going on, and then the news links to your organization. People have that emotional, immediate, urgent response to get relief for that suffering now, and donations might be made even if they've never heard of your organization before. But as I mentioned, because most nonprofits are not operating in that sort of natural disaster schema, you're going to be needing to take some time to build up your audience, building a relationship, building trust with them before you can ask them for money. And then when you do, a certain portion of the audience that you've built up might donate. Question number 4 is from user named Mavi, and is kind of similar to question number 3, and it reminds me a bit of it in spirit. And the question is, well, it's more like a statement, but no one is interested in my campaign. I don't know why. I can't do it alone without the support of others. What should I do? This is tough, and I feel for you because I've been there so many times, but I think that the answer goes back to what I was saying for question number 3, and that is that it would be very difficult. You would have to be very lucky, in my opinion, to just put a fundraising campaign or a crowdfunding campaign out there into the world without having a significant audience first and a marketing strategy first. People are unlikely to just stumble upon your website or campaign, and even if they do, if they don't have that, like I said, connection to your cause, they're probably unlikely to be compelled to make a donation. And I think it's important to not take it personally. Think of it as the same as sales or buying things. You're exposed to dozens or hundreds or thousands of products and services every month, but you don't buy them all. You only buy some of them, and you're more likely to buy them when you've had more exposure to them, you trust them as a brand, and you have a personal connection to them. So without having more details about the specific campaign referenced in this comment, my guess is that a campaign may have been launched without that base first, and then that's something that you need to pause and focus on building up that audience before you launch your campaign again or launch it at all. Now, in the event that you do have an audience and something is still not sticking, there are a couple of things you can troubleshoot to look through your campaign and think about why there might not be actions taken. A couple of thoughts are you've got to have a compelling story. So focus on the story of one or a handful of people or if you serve animals that your organization serves. Tell their story, help build that empathy and connection, and then make sure it's clear how your organization is improving their lives. So that story piece is really, really important. If you only include data in your fundraising ask, for example, a statistic like 1,000 animals are suffering today, something like that, people's brains tend to shut off because it's a little bit abstract. But if you include the story with it, that'll help a lot. And then the second thing I would recommend is to make sure that you have a very, very, very clear and visible call to action. I've seen presentations and speeches given where someone makes this incredible pitch and story, but then they forget to make the ask at the end. They go through all that trouble, and then at the end, they forget to tell the audience what they want them to do about what they just heard. So make sure at the end of your communication or website or whatever that you have a very large button that says what you want them to do. Donate here, sign up to volunteer, whatever it may be. And you explain that taking that action is going to help address the problem that you described earlier in the communication. Question number 5. All right, this one is from Leah. Hey, Leah, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Leah says, another fantastic video that popped up just as I needed it. Thanks for your kind words. Someone told me that we might be asked how much money we've already raised. And I assume this is within the context of a fundraising campaign that you're doing. Is this a question I should expect? Also, mentioned that people will ask if the board are also donors, that foundations want to see 100% contributions by board members. What is your experience with this? Okay, so this is kind of a two-part question. I'm going to get into this first part. And the question, as I understand it, is if you are in the process of doing a fundraising campaign, do people want to see how much you've already raised? And I think that the answer is yes. And I also want to clarify that we might be talking about a couple different types of donors or funders here. If you're talking about a grant foundation, grants definitely love to see how much you've already raised or how much you think you're going to be able to raise from other sources who are not them. And the reason for that is they don't necessarily want to make a grant to a project or an organization that has no other support anywhere else. They want to see community investment in your project in order to equip them to say yes to your grant request as well. Now, if you're talking about individual donors asking whether or how much you have raised during your campaign as well, I also think the answer is yes there. And I think that there's merit to offering up that information even if people are not asking for it explicitly. And here is why. There is some great donor psychology research that shows that people are much more likely to make a donation if they see that you are relatively close to meeting your ultimate goal. So think of those pages you'll see with a thermometer on it or some kind of scale where you see, this much raised or this much is filled in on the thermometer. People are much more likely to donate when there's at least some of that already filled in. I think it's the same reason grant people might do it. It's because they want to see other people have invested as well. But when you're talking about individuals, there's also an element of what's called social proof there. And social proof is when people are more likely to trust something when they see that several others have gotten on board, so to speak, too. So the answer in summary is, yes, you might expect that question, but also it's a good idea to just offer up that information if possible too. Now, that second part of your question was, do people expect, or I guess in this case, do funders expect to see 100% board giving during a campaign? Yes, the answer is yes again. And I think that similarly relates to the first part of the question. You, in general, ideally want to see 100% of your board members giving something to the organization each year and something to each campaign, even if it's $1, even if it's some small amount, because we know, board members are going to be in varying places in their income, and it's important to, be inclusive and make sure their board leadership is accessible for everyone despite income level. So being able to give 100% demonstrates to your donors and to funders that your leadership is invested. And it's this whole question of, well, why should I donate to your cause if you aren't even donating or your leadership isn't even donating to your cause? So I hope that helps. The sixth and final question that I'm going to talk through today is from Diane W. Diane asks, can a nonprofit sell t-shirts with the name of the nonprofit on it as a fundraiser? So Diane and others asking themselves this question, the answer is simply yes, but again, there's a little bit of nuance here, and here is what it is. So nonprofits can sell goods and merchandise and even services as income streams, as revenue streams. This is called earned income. However, if the act of selling those things does not align with and further, I think that's the important distinction, it does not further the organization's actual public serving social mission, then in that case, the IRS might stick you with what's called unrelated business income taxes or penalties. I talk extensively about earned income and this unrelated business income penalty thing in some of my other videos about earned income, so definitely go check those out. But basically what it is the IRS in the United States has granted your organization a special classification as a tax-exempt organization. And the thing that comes along with that privilege is the tax-exempt status for donations, of course, but what the IRS doesn't want you to do is compete with businesses. So it is saying that you can raise money in a variety of ways as long as the way you raise money is directly tied to furthering your mission and is not doing something that might compete with a business. This is kind of hard to wrap your brain around, so let me give a few examples. So let's talk about the Girl Scouts. Okay, we know the famous Girl Scout fundraiser is having Girl Scouts go out and sell Girl Scout cookies. We all know them, we all love them, it's wonderful. Now, a part of the Girl Scout mission, its charitable mission, is to help girls develop entrepreneurial skills. Okay, this is key. So if the Girl Scouts are selling cookies, the argument the Girl Scouts is making is that through the act of selling cookies, these girls are learning entrepreneurial skills, even though cookies as an item have nothing to do with the mission. Now, let's say an animal-related organization wanted to sell cookies as its fundraiser. That would not qualify. that would possibly be slapped with UBI or unrelated business income penalties, because nothing about the animal organization's charitable mission is furthered through the act of selling cookies. I hope that this helps you wrap your brains around this just a little bit. Definitely do some further research, because earned income can be quite a wonderful way to generate revenue for a nonprofit organization, but you do have to follow some rules and you do have to do it correctly. So back to Diane's question, could you sell t-shirts? Yes, you could, but if you raised a lot of money, like over a certain threshold or percent of your annual budget through these t-shirts, you might get charged these unrelated business income taxes. And I also want to say, some organizations just say, you know what, I don't care, give me those taxes, and they do it anyway. So you can make that decision, but you do have to, as an organization, be getting a certain amount of your revenue from public support, or you might have your 501c3 status taken from you. Now, let's say Diane's t-shirts had messages about mental health on them, and her organization, its mission was to raise awareness about mental health. I could maybe see an argument there that then the sale of the t-shirts, which have these messages on them, is raising awareness about mental health. I could maybe see that. So once again, this is a situation where if you're not sure, talk to your accountant/lawyer. All right, those are the 6 I'm gonna cover today. I'd love to hear, what did you think? Did you like this format? Do you have more questions you'd like me to answer in future videos? Definitely share in the comments below. And did maybe some of the questions you already had on your mind, did they get answered today? Let me know in the comments. As I mentioned before, if you are starting a nonprofit or developing a sustainable fundraising plan, check out my resources and trainings at foundertofulltime.com there. I also have a newsletter for changemakers and nonprofit leaders, and you can find the link to subscribe to that in my comments/description on the video. And finally, I have a group on Facebook called Change the World or Bust. So if you are on Facebook, come join us there. We've got a couple thousand folks from all over the world making an impact. That's all I have for today. Once again, I'm Amber Melanie Smith, and I hope you liked this video. Hope to see you next time.